Hello, this is Charles Skilton again, and now we're about to complete this painting of the beach boat, and I just thought I'd show you a few of my techniques, which might be a bit odd by other people's standards, but especially with watercolour, but I'll do my best to explain the way I do things. What I'm doing at the moment, I'm making a very watery line to represent the little waves that sort of just come up to the boat and to the shore, a gentle lap of a wave really, and it's really water on my brush with a very thin dilute white paint. Here I'm using a little bit of titanium white, and just put a bit on my brush there. That just gives me the sort of hint of white, but my brush is quite wet, and you can see I just made a slight line. You might just be able to see it, but where the rock is actually touching the water, I'm actually putting in quite a bit of white there, sort of on the edge of the brush, and twisting the brush as I'm doing it, and going along and twisting. That tends to give me a sort of ripple effect, and it's a sort of technique that you get used to with experience. So it's difficult to teach an experience, you just have to do it yourself. I'm going to do the same here, just to get a little bit of a wavelet, as it were, coming from round that corner where it's very bright to just underneath where the boat is. And here of course is the top of the wave that's still wandering off, and another wave here, and I'm bringing that through just so it acts as a reflective point. So just touching the waves, a little bit of white, just enough to give it a hint that it's possibly it's like a miniature wave really. So you just need to be very gentle with that as you're coming along there, and that's what I'm attempting to do here. Right underneath the boat, of course, there is not only a shadow from the boat itself, but there's also a reflection. So try and differentiate between the two where they're coming, and the same is the same with the waves. And even though it's a small wave, there is underneath each wavelet, as it were, each wave, there is a shadow, which of course is cast by the sun. And of course there's more of a permanent shadow underneath where the boat is, because the shadow of the boat's throwing it more into contrast with the wave top, as it were. And what I'm doing here is just adding a few little lines of waves as if they're coming in. You don't really see them because it gets transparent, doesn't it, as I'm sure you know. So just underneath the transparency of the wave, I'm putting a line just to determine, slightly dark line, just to determine where the wave actually is. Now you can see there's blue on that particular point, but what I'm doing now is I'm going to that corner where the lightest point is on the boat, because that's where the wave, the white wave, is actually hitting the sun from the outside, because the sun's coming in from the top left hand side and hitting that wave right there. And at the top of that wave you do need some light. Well, I do need some light, so I'm adding a bit of white to that, and of course it's quite wet that I'm using, so that it actually will dry slightly darker than this, but you'll get the impression of water on the top. There's a wave coming over and curling over, just about to hit into that part there, still very, very shallow. Now another technique is I can wet a tissue like this, and I dampen everything, but then move downwards on the actual beach. That's where the sand is, so I'm going down. As you can see, there are lines coming down, and then there's just one sweep through, or even two sweeps through, and what that does, it tends to give the impression of it being very wet. So again, some clean water, make it quite wet, squeeze out a bit, hold it tight, down, down and down. The painting's relatively dry by this time, I might add, not soaking wet, otherwise you'd lose all your detail. So now, having done that, I go across once, maybe twice, and then a little bit at the top. Now I'm just fitting back in all the stuff I knocked out really, but I can see where it was, so I'm brightening them up by darkening them down, if that makes any kind of sense. So I'm putting sort of shadows in and around the stones that are there, and this other technique is of course getting your the same colour. In this case it's burnt umber with some red, and making it quite wet and dipping your brush into the water, and then just pat it on the edge of the palette, and that puts all this debris and detritus that you get on a beach, the odd stone and stuff like that. Then I just finish off with the hairdryer. That dries the painting, and that's it, really finished. So I hope you like it. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.